Hi, good morning. This is Damon Scott, Marketing Director here at PVBS, and I want to thank everyone for joining us on our introduction to Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors. Today, we will be providing an overview of the Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors, which is a fully integrated business management solution. Today's presentation will include an overview of the executive dashboard. We'll get into some of the fully integrated web time and expense system. We'll also take a look at project setup, including billing setup and managing funding, invoicing and invoice formats, and hopefully we'll have enough time to get into managing the direct rates as well. All right, so a little housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to our PVBS YouTube account, which is PVBS Dynamics NAV, later today. If you have any questions as we go through the webinar, you can post those into the questions section, and we'll get to those as we go along. If we can't get to your question at that time, we'll either try to save a little time at the end or contact you separately. Also, later today, you should receive an email invitation to take a post-webinar survey. We really appreciate any feedback that you can provide because we do want to make this a better learning tool for everyone. So please take a few minutes and answer a few questions for us. We do appreciate that. Okay, today's agenda for the webinar includes a brief introduction about PVBS, and then we're going to jump right into a demonstration of the product. Okay, again, if you have questions, please ask those, and we'll try to get those as we go through. So PVBS is a top-tier Microsoft Business Solutions partner serving only the government contracting market. Our headquarters are just outside Washington, D.C. in Reston, Virginia. Gives us a unique access and insight into the GovCon community. Also, as an experienced leader with over 14 years of success in the GovCon market and an intelligent innovator with Microsoft systems, PVBS is a direct resource to both government contractors and the Microsoft community. Also, Microsoft Dynamics NAV for government contractors from PVBS is a rich, robust accounting solution, compliant with federal rules and regulation, and provides complete integration and ease of use. PVBS is driven to develop excellence in providing the most comprehensive solution to our clients and our partnership channels. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Paul Skirpsky. He's our VP of Sales and Marketing, one of the founding members here at PVBS. Paul, welcome, and I'll let you take over from here.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks, Damon, for the introduction. One of the things that I want to add is at the bottom of this slide, it mentions the type of clients that we have, and what I wanted to really communicate is that today's presentation is going to be more around professional services side of the business. But our clients are not only providing professional services for the federal government, but they're also selling products and also making products for the government. So we've got clients across all three of those business lines, and some that do all three within one business model. So I'm excited to present for you today. My background is in enterprise software systems, so I've been doing that for about the last 25 years. And been working with Microsoft Dynamics NAV since the late 90s. So before Microsoft bought this company called Navision Software, I was working on a project for one of the largest smart card companies in the world. We were making smart cards for the U.S. government and also commercial applications. So fast forward, that was in the late 90s, I guess fast forward about 20 years now. And Microsoft in the early 2000s bought this company, and they've made significant investments, and we've seen tremendous growth. So now Dynamics NAV has over 130,000 customers worldwide using the application, with over 4,000 certified partners like PVBS and over 2 million licensed users. So it's become the most widely used mid-market accounting business software in the world. So it's excited to be part of really the market leader with Microsoft, and really we're seeing some tremendous innovation that they're delivering. Microsoft does everything through a partner channel. So like Damon mentioned, I mean, our organization, we focus on companies that sell to the federal government, but our clients, they may also have commercial business, sell to state and local government, but for the most part, their core business is typically working with the federal government. And Microsoft delivers their solutions through a partner network, and these are some of those key industry targets that Microsoft goes after. And our organization, again, focused on government contracting. And there was a slide that Damon had that talked about our solutions are certified for Microsoft Dynamics. And what that means is the things that we've done to improve the product, we actually submit them to Microsoft for certification before they're released to the general marketplace. And not only does PVBS service it, but there's other Dynamics NAV partners out there servicing our solutions on NAV and also AX, which is Microsoft's Tier 1 product. So this is an exciting day for me because this will be the last webinar on Dynamics NAV 2016. So if you tune in next month, you'll see Dynamics NAV 2017. And Dynamics NAV 2016, there were some significant improvements, and I just want to talk about some of those things, and I'm going to give you a little glimpse into what does 2017 mean. So with NAV 2016, some of the big changes were, one, their enhanced Office 365 experience. So two elements to that. Number one is the application integrates with Office 365. So whether you're using Excel, Word, or SharePoint within Office 365, and now they've integrated it with Power BI. And with NAV 2017, they actually embedded Power BI inside of Dynamics NAV. And I'm going to give you a little glimpse of what is Power BI. So I'll show you that in a little bit. The third box is exciting to me. I just did a presentation for one of our clients down in Atlanta recently and showed them the new user experience with 2017. And what that includes is not only a rich experience from the desktop, a full browser-based capability, so you don't need to load software anymore if you don't want to. You can leverage it for a tablet and also a phone. So, and the thing that I think is exciting is from a phone perspective, it's not just Microsoft phones. So I had a little joke that I always tell about, there's not many people out there using Microsoft phones. In my last live presentation, somebody raised their hand to let me know that, they do use the Microsoft Windows phone. So there are people out there using it, but if you use Android or Apple devices, this works on that. And the last thing is this box that says e-everything. And the two big things are around this center box, which says OCR, which is optical character recognition. So this solution can actually feed things to an OCR control, which can read a document and actually create a record inside of Dynamics NAV. So the best example is around purchasing. So if you had a purchase invoice that you received from a vendor, you could feed it to the OCR control, and it can actually create the PO for you. Pretty exciting stuff, taking away some of that manual nature of what people do today. The second is around e-banking. So for folks that want to integrate the financial system with their bank account to do things like clear checks or any kind of updates on deposits that you make or fees, they've got an integration that I think integrates with 180 different banks. So some exciting stuff happening in 2016, and not to make it anticlimactic, but 2016 did some great things, and then the next presentation, we're going to build on that and show you some things around Dynamics NAV 2017. So I'm going to flip over to the demonstration now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with a little bit of a general overview and just show you a little bit about the look and feel of the application, and then I'm going to go into a little bit of a day in the life. I guess before we do that, Damon's got a couple polls that he's going to cover, and maybe the first one, Damon, I think we've got one on, you got a specific one queued up?
No, I was all
okay.
A couple. But
if we've got one on what Microsoft products people are using, do we have one like that?
we do.
Okay.
And that's exactly what
Okay, perfect.
Microsoft products does your company use. Which ones are you familiar with? And you can select all that apply. So there's Office 365, Outlook, SharePoint, Excel, and then others.
Yeah, so we'll give people a few minutes to vote. And the reason why we want to see this is that, if we've got a lot of folks on here using Office 365, we certainly want to show you a little bit about Power BI. And,
we're just almost
we got about
7%
have voted, 72, 78.
Okay.
Now, there's always somebody that doesn't want to vote in the poll, and that's okay. Once we get to 85, we stop, and we're at 83 right now. All right, we just went over 90%. All right, so it looks like we got about 60% people are using Office 365, with about 90% plus using Excel. And so what I'm going to start out with, because we've got 60% of the folks on this call using Office 365, I want to start out with Power BI, which is the Microsoft dashboard tool. So let me just go ahead. Okay, I'm at 100%. So people are, I guess 60+% of the people are familiar with this little waffle over here on the left-hand side. And this takes me to the different elements of Office 365. And what I'm in here is Power BI, which is Microsoft's dashboard tool. And what Microsoft did is, like I mentioned, they embedded this dashboard tool in Dynamics NAV 2017. It does two things. One is the security is controlled through one place, and it also provides one central location to get to all the information. So this is just a generic dashboard, and we're going to unveil our dashboards on the government contracting side next month. So stay tuned for that. So this is the Microsoft demo dashboard. So you've seen information about sales for the month. I've got details about opportunity pipeline, cash cycles, a little bit about profitability by country. So if I drill into one of these sections, I drill into details around my trial balance, I'm seeing some information about gross margins and operating margins, a little bit about cash cycles. Over to the right, these are filters that I can set. So I can choose a certain range of dates that I want to look at. So this is something as a user that this can be the way I start my day. I can also subscribe to one of these views, which is a way to have things more pushed to me versus having to go there and access them. So you can have dashboards that are specific to the executive team maybe, but also dashboards that might be unique to operations. So you can set your own set of views, make those available to folks in the organization, and give them the ability to access the data in pretty much real time. In addition to having these dashboards that each one has something behind it, you also have the ability to get to more of what I would say not raw data, but query data that I can build my own views on the fly. So over to the right, I'm going to show you this inside of Power BI. I'm going to show you a similar concept in Excel in just a couple minutes. But the idea would be, as a user, if I wanted to look at total sales and see that broken out by the customer, I'm just choosing sales by name of customer. It created a nice little bar chart for me here. And then maybe I want to also add into it information about profitability, but in this case, I want to see it by country and region. You know, so now I just created another chart, and we'll make that into a pie chart showing us a breakout by country and region. But these can be any of the measures that are relevant to your business. And then maybe I want to see information. This says by salesperson, but maybe it's by PM, and I want that to be a filter. You know, so I'm creating a little view for myself here in terms of how do I want to analyze the business. And then let's just add a grid. So I'm going to say, let's look at profit by the name of the customer also. And I'm going to turn this into a grid. And you can set filters on these things. So maybe I don't want to look at anyone that has profit that's less than 0. I want to live in my little bubble world and pretend that, what did I do there? So I just put is less than 0, which is nobody. I want to look at everything that's greater than 0. So this is, you know, my view that I have. And one of the things that's nice about this Power BI application is it's all dynamic. So as I select one cell, you see that the other cells, they display that information based on that filter that I set. So if that's an organization, you're trying to deliver rich analytics to people from an operations or an executive perspective, a great way to do that from a browser-based application and not requiring somebody, you know, to get into the accounting system to really get the answers to the questions that they might have. All right, so I know most of the folks on the call today are in accounting, so you know, we better cover some accounting stuff too. But I think, you know, the way I see accounting is really, accounting is in a lot of ways the most important service center in your business. You know, we're providing information to many groups so that they can determine how successful they are at reaching their goals. So those rich analytics are great. Now the question is, how hard is it for me as a user, to be able to record that information so I can produce that data for my other constituents. So I'm logged into the application now, and there are, like I mentioned, there's 4 ways to get to the application. I can either get to it from, I've got what we call an installed client or a rich client. That's what I logged in as here. In our next webinar, we're going to also show the web-based client. So there's a browser-based client that looks almost exactly like this. So instead of me loading any software on my machine, I can also use the browser-based client, and then tablet and phones are the other options. So the system has what they call role-based security and also a role-based interface. So I'm logged in as an accounting manager. So my home page is designed a certain way with information like activities, some canned dashboards. Down below, you'll see a little integration to Outlook for me. On the right-hand side, this is data around notifications. So it's like instant messaging. So anyone can take a note inside the system on a record, send it off to another user, and it would show up in my notes section here. The job queue, the system has probably about 300 or 400 different reports. So any report can be processed on the fly, and I've got my favorite reports on my home page. But these reports, in addition to running them, so I can open up a report, set filters and run it, print it, send it to PDF, Word, Excel, or also schedule it. So when I schedule a report, it shows up in my scheduling queue. And these reports can be scheduled to be processed one time, or when I schedule it, I can tell the system it's a recurring report. So maybe this AR history by project, I want it to process every Monday when I get in, and then I want it to be sent to me as a PDF file. So it'd actually be in my inbox as a PDF file or any of the other formats that I choose.
Hey, Paul, someone asked if that form can be customized, the reports can be customized.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to go through that real quick?
Sure, yeah. So I don't know which section they were talking about, but it's easy because any of the reports. So whether it's a report inside of NAV, which uses SQL reporting services, you can certainly tailor those to a format that you like. It's different than the standard one. And then in addition on Power BI, you've got the same capability. So you can take any of those views and tailor them. People can save those Power BI views and share them with other people. So if you create something that's powerful, you can share that on. And then on the right-hand side, this is saying my job. So this is, as a user, a way that I can have a subset of the master list. So in my demo system, I've got probably 60, 70 different jobs. But on my home page, I've got these 5 that I go into in every demo. So as a user, it's just a way to keep it at the forefront, quick access. But this can be any master record on my home page. It could be my vendors, my customers, my employees, the most important thing in the business. If I want to get into the detail, I just double click it. So I launched this job setup screen, and I'm going to show you in a little bit how we set up a job. But while I'm here, I want to just show you a little information on this card because it's different than other systems in that I don't need to run a report to see information about this record. So this job 1002, I can quickly see details about contract and funded value, AR balance, billings, etc. So each one of these measures behind it is additional detail. So my AR balance of 8,000, when I drill into that number, it shows me what makes up that $8,000. It's also visually enhanced to show me that if it's overdue, it's red. So in my demo system, it looks like nobody ever pays us, but that's okay. You are able to see the details of it. So, why didn't they pay us? So when I'm on this invoice number 68, or I'm on this AR entry, it came from invoice number 68. When I'm on it, I look at the notes over here. So it says, client said they didn't receive it. Okay, no problem. What we're going to do is we're going to send it right back out to them. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the invoice. I'll hit my email button, and now I can send them a PDF version of that invoice. So simple to do that. I could also print them a hard copy. Maybe they want to see a hard copy of that invoice. I can certainly do that. And once I did that, then, the client is saying, okay, check's in the mail. I can see the detail there. And when they sent the check, you can see that it looks like they didn't pay us the whole amount. So when I drill into this remaining amount of $672, it shows, well, they only paid us $1,000. Maybe I want to make sure that that $1,000 went into the bank. I can hit my navigate button, and this is going to show me all the related entries. So in this case, yeah, we did deposit it, it looks like, but it hasn't cleared the bank account yet. You know, so if you use that automated service, if it did hit the bank account and there was an exact match, the system could clear it for me. So really just a way to quickly get to information, answer questions you might have on the business. To give you an idea of the breadth of the application, I'll go to the department list. So these are all the different modules built into the application. So everything from all the financial management elements, so GL, cash management, receivables, payables, etc. Sales orders, purchase orders for clients that have products, warehousing and manufacturing. There's also product contracts for selling products. Project accounting is where we're going to spend our time today. This is around the professional services side, resource planning, HR and payroll, but we also integrate with payroll providers. So some of the key payroll providers, you know, around ADP, Paychex, payroll networks, and I think Paycom is another one that we've been, you know, starting to hear more about and talking to. So, you know, you'll see it's a fully integrated system, all within one database. So the second thing we're going to go into today is timesheets. So we're going to cover timesheets and expense reports, and we'll actually enter some examples for you. I started off today with that Power BI example, but in addition to giving access to information from Power BI, users can also surface data inside of Excel. So how you're able to do that is under the data tab, you can go to the connections, and we've got different cubes of data. So there's a GL cube, a job cube, and also a product and purchasing cube. And then we created some standard or default dashboards. So this is the general business overview. So it's showing me a trend of my revenue, profit, and AR, a balance sheet with some key ratios over to the right here, income statement, cash flow, and a couple indirect rate trend views. So when I select one of these cells here, you can see that there's no data keyed in there. It's just looking at this cube of information. So it's a way to provide some visualization to people that might not be users of the system and don't want to get into the system. There's also a set of project views. So income statement by job and task, burn rate, labor analysis, cost analysis. So each one of these views is going to give me a little different picture of the business. So in this case, I'm selecting the projects that I want to analyze and the tasks, the period, and then the grid is showing me details about my top line, all of my operating expenses, including my indirects, my net income or loss, and then also what was spent. So that's how much the funding got used. Over to the right, you're seeing a graphical representation of that funding being burned over time. So that's the last 6 months of funding being used. And then this little gas gauge is giving me a little predictive indicator. So it's saying if you continue at the same pace, so it just takes the average, divides it by remaining, and it'll give me a projection of how much funding do I have left. So in this case, the system thinks I've got 9.5 months of funding left. That person that talked about, can you tailor these views? So I've had people, instead of using the average burn rate, I've had people use the budgeted burn rate. So if you look at the budgeted burn rate, it might show a different picture. It might say that I've backloaded, you know, the use of labor and materials, and we're going to actually run out of funding before we get done with the project. So it's a great way to visualize and give people information about their projects. The cost detail, this is just, if you think about it, I'm taking away the top line and bottom line and just showing somebody the elements of cost related to their projects over to the right. And then labor analysis is just a trend of hours. So I'm seeing the hours trended over time. Just like when we were in Power BI, if I have a blank sheet, I'm going to go to a blank sheet. Let me take out some of these. Let me first make it blank. And then I'm going to just show you a little bit about how somebody could analyze things on the fly. So I've got a blank sheet, and now here are the different kind of measures that we have. So different budgeted measures. Job ledger is your historical project data. So you've got AR data, billings data, hours, labor costs. So if I take the values and drop them into my sheet, I'm just going to grab a few of them, and then I'll talk a little bit about how you could use something like this. So we're going to grab our labor costs. We're going to grab also unposted hours. And then in the rows would be, what is it that I want to analyze in terms of the grouping side of it. So if I want to look at my details by contract, now it's showing me all of these contracts, how many hours are through the timesheet system and into accounting. Here's the hours that are in timesheets, haven't made it to accounting yet, the labor cost, and then this unposted spent. Let me flip this to just show T&M projects, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how this can be used. So let's grab the type of job and put that as a filter, and we're going to say, let's look at T&M projects only. So now here's my list of contract vehicles. The spent amount for T&M is equal to what's going to be billed. So the spent is about the funding being used. So inside of timesheets, we've got $196,000 of billings that haven't been processed through the accounting system yet. Whenever you see this little plus sign, it means I can expand it. So you can see that under that contract called test, there's 3 different projects going on, or task orders. I can drill into these to see detail. I could also add additional hierarchies. So if I wanted to see not only the contract vehicle, I wanted to see what was the name of the customer we're doing the work for underneath of it. So now you can see this, actually, let me do it this way here. So Department of State, I've got a project called Operation Morning Light. I've got one also called Project Kempster. Operation Morning Light, there's 576 hours. If I wanted to know details about that, I could actually drill into it. So when I drill into it, I could say resources. Who are the people? So I'm going to drill down, and I'm going to show you what is the resource names of the people that are charging time in the timesheet. So we'll drill to that, and now you can see, here's the breakout of current and past people that charge. Well, maybe you wanted to first group it in a different way. I want to see this. I want to see it by labor category code first. So let's actually do that kind of analysis, and let's look at the labor category code. I'll grab the LCAT name and drill into it. So now I'm seeing the labor category codes, and then maybe I want to see who are the people underneath that project management labor category code, and we'll do the same kind of thing, and I'm going to drill down and we'll look at the actual names of the folks. So now here's the detail there. So I kind of started out with the end of the story, which is the analysis, and now let's go back to the beginning and talk a little bit about how I'm actually recording data in the system. And I'm going to start with this project here, 1002. Actually, let's go to, I guess we were talking about Operation Morning Light. Maybe we should go to that one to start. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to open up that project, and so this is the setup for the project. You've got information by tab. So I've got general data about who's the customer, what type of customer it is, who's the main contact at that customer, our PM, the type of contract, etc. When I go to the posting tab, this would be details about revenue recognition, billing formulas, so all the financial elements of a project. And then when I go to the contract tab, this is how the system knew, if you remember earlier, that there was a contract associated with that work performed. This is how the system knew that. So this is the contract vehicle, details about contracting office and paying office. So if I actually go into that contract card, we'll go ahead and pull that up. On the contract card, I'd see details about, the IFF associated with it, what type of contract it is. If I wanted to see any of the contract pricing, so if you've got a GSA schedule with predefined labor rates, I've got that all built out right here. So here's the detail related to that contracted vehicle. So in this case, because this one's a T&M, if I wanted to bring my T&M pricing in to this, I've got my GSA rates, but I want to copy them over to the job, I could just hit OK, and it would copy all of the T&M pricing by effective date. And if I wanted to offer a discount offer, I could do that. And I say OK, and it brings it into project-specific pricing. So when I hit the pricing on this tab, you can see it's 42025. So this is the breakout of my pricing for 2025. You see it's by labor category code and effective date. So let's look at just one labor category code. I'm going to look at just my consultant one labor category code. So once you define the bill rate for a labor category code, then the people working on the project, I can assign them a project labor category code because their corporate labor category code could be different. So let's show them both at the same time. And I'm going to show my labor category code of consultant one over here. I want to filter, not copy. So now you can see that Paul, Mary, Ricky, Abdul, and Julie on this job, they're all consultant one. So that's how the system knows when they charge time, the rate they bill at is right over here. It's 167.19. The thing you see is this starting date or effective date. It can be any day of the month. So if this rate changes in the middle of a timesheet period, the system will capture the proper rate by date. You see on my little ribbon here the Excel icon, and you can see when I hover over it, it says also Control E. So if I hit the Excel button or Control E, it takes that data and sends it off to Excel. So now in Excel, I have that same breakout of pricing schedule. There is a free add-in to Excel, a Dynamics NAV tab, that allows me to refresh the data, which would give me whatever the latest is. So if Damon went in and updated the T&M price rates, if I hit refresh here, it'd bring in the latest information. If I wanted to make some kind of update via Excel, so I'm going to go ahead and copy my T&M pricing, and then I'm going to make a formula here. And we're just going to say that we gave the customer a 1% discount here, to win the business. And then I'll make it to the nearest penny. And I want to bring this back in the system. Anytime you've got a list or a ledger, what you'll see is you're going to see an option to copy and paste. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out these old entries. And then I'm going to just right click, and you can see there's a function to paste the rows. So now I can actually take that data from Excel and bring it in. So that's kind of the seamless way on how NAV can interface with Excel and how that works. So now I've got my labor category codes and pricing set up. So now we win some business. So let's talk about creating task orders, defining funding, and things of that nature. So within my work breakdown structure, this is the place where I can build my WBS. So the WBS is a 60-character alphanumeric field. And the idea of the WBS is it's mainly covering three elements. So the first is around managing your contract and funded value. So these can be set at any level of WBS. So I might have contract value up at the top, and then it's funded by either option year, or it could be funded by task. So in my demo example, I have it funded at this task level. And you'll see, and it can map to ACRNs or CLINs, and you can see the detail that I have. I've got a little over 10 million funded for my labor task. This amount, if I drill into it, again, I see that number with a line underneath, but I can drill into it. Here's the detail. So this is all the mods. So it can be changed to contract value, funded value, whether it's obligation or deobligation of funds, changed to the POP, POC, etc. So I'll see all the history of this. I can also get there from my ribbon. So here is the same kind of detail. If I wanted to make an entry, I would just type into my list. We'll say mod number 49. I'll put in T for today's date. Let's just say that it's $205,000 is this mod and fully funded. Once I refresh this, you see that this went to 10.4 million. I say OK here, we just went to 11 million. So the system will manage those mods. I enter them at the detailed level, and it rolls it up to each successive level for me. So a little bit about mods. I think it's a good spot to talk about. I think you got them there. Do we have in there SharePoint? People using SharePoint?
Yes.
Okay.
There are some.
Okay, so there's some folks using SharePoint. So this has an integration with SharePoint. So from a document management perspective, when I get that mod from the government, I can just drag and drop it against my record here. So PDF, Excel, any kind of file, I can drag and drop it. It associates it with the record, puts it into SharePoint. So not 100% of the folks run SharePoint today.
Over 80%.
Over 80. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So two things. One is if you don't have SharePoint, you can use the free version of SharePoint. That's a good thing. We went to a company recently that said, you know, we don't want to use SharePoint, and that's okay too. There's also this links function. So this allows me to, instead of using SharePoint, I can just create a link to the document. So this would just be using like your file directory. So it wouldn't be a drag and drop. It would just be, I take that document and link it back to here. So I just would go and, you know, take it off the server. So we'll just grab, we'll grab the file and save it. And then this would create that link to the document. So the only thing you want to do there is you want to put it on a shared directory, so it's not on my local, which people wouldn't have access to. That's the nice thing about SharePoint is the drag and drop puts it into a shared directory. So, but a great way to attach documents, and I've had people talk about using it for, you know, managing the contract files, funding mods, certs and reps for vendors, so attaching them to vendor cards, attaching documents to the purchase order. So a great way to manage documents there. So that's the first thing about the WBS is managing the funding. The second is around the charging levels. So my lowest level is my charging level. So I have this level called labor. This is a timesheet code. And then I've got materials, which is for expense or requisition. So you're just telling the system what type of code it is. And now automatically it's synced with the timesheet table. So there is no function or file. As soon as I do it, it's done in real time. And then the third piece is around membership and approvals. So I'm telling the system that the people that can see this are the blue team. And when I select that button, what you see is the list of people that can see it. It can either be the folks that are on the team, which is this example, or I can assign people just to this project. In addition to assigning them, they can also be assigned for a period of time. So in this example, Carter is only seeing this code for 1 month. If there is no period on there, then it just defaults to whatever's in the task. So this task is open for 3 years. It would be open for 3 years for the folks that are viewing it. And then the other thing to note is on the task, every task order can be of a different type. So I could have some tasks that are T&M and some that are fixed price. So really a streamlined, easy way to manage and set up the WBS, all integrated with the timesheet in real time. So that's a little bit about a T&M. I'm going to flip to a cost type project to cover, you know, a couple last things regarding project setup. All right, so while I'm doing that, Daniel, let's do a quick poll, and let's see maybe what systems people are using today, just to get a sense for, you know, what is their frame of reference.
That's a good idea, Paul. And so I just put up a poll here. What accounting solution is your company currently operating? And you can select one here. We do have the Deltek options of CostPoint and GCS Premier, QuickBooks, Procast, or others. Looks like right now, Paul, a lot of Deltek GCS Premier users.
Okay.
I know they're obviously going through the shopping.
All right, so it looks like we got most of them in. So Deltek GCS is 50%. CostPoint we've got in at a little over 20%, and QuickBooks a little higher than 20. We got a little on Procast, a little on others. All right, excellent. Okay, so I'm guessing we've got some folks on the call that probably have some cost type contracts. So let me go ahead and I'll pull up a cost type project and then cover a little bit about how this one's set up. So I won't cover most of the stuff. I'm just going to cover a little bit about some of the billing setups here. So I've got my revenue and billing formulas for cost type work. These can be configured by you. My billing pool group, this is what tells the system in terms of my recovery of indirect rates. If it's different than how I allocate, I can have a structure of recovery that's different. So my example that I often talk about is no G&A on travel. So I might apply G&A out differently from my provisional rates, but in terms of the billing recovery, it could be different for this job. And then my fee percent is the fee that I earn. So these are just codes that you set up that it can be reused. So if I have 3 projects where we get 5% across all of our direct expense categories, I can just choose that. It's already set up for me. Fee amount is fee on hours and any kind of withholding. So those are some setups on the cost type side. The other thing to mention about cost type work is budgeted rates. So in addition to having a rate structure that's different, you can have rate amounts that are different. So if I had a discount off my overhead, fringe, G&A, SMH, whatever it might be, I could have what we call a budgeted rate, which means the rate at which I recover might be different than the rate at which I allocate from a provisional perspective. So that's the idea of that. Budgeting and forecasting, I'm going to touch on a couple things on this just to give you a flavor for the kind of things you can do here. So this is the place where I can identify the resources working on the job, the tasks they're working under. I can identify the number of hours that they're going to work. Underneath the hours, so you can have users that only can enter the hours, but underneath of it, it calculates, based on their pay rate, what is the budgeted amount, and then based on the type of contract, what is the budgeted revenue. So I can do my labor buildup. There's also a copy function, which is a way to spread things. So I could take my labor cost from 1 month, and it has what they call a working time calendar, which identifies how many hours are in each month for any resource, and it can basically take that ratio and copy it to future months. And then in terms of other direct costs, they can load that in there. The system's going to calculate what the burden is, in this case, in this cost type project, and because it's cost type fixed fee, it's also identifying what is the fee that you would earn based on that initial setup. There's also import-export from Excel. You've got the ability to have unlimited number of budgets, so I could have my baseline budget. Then maybe I use on a fixed price an ETC budget to do a revenue calculation. So lots of capabilities there. And today isn't meant to train you or show you everything. It's meant to introduce you. Then for folks that have additional interests, we're happy to follow up to spend time and learn more about your needs and show you in more detail how it can work for you. So that's a little bit about the budgeted setup. And then the last thing before I go over to time and expense is to touch on these alerts. And what alerts are meant to do is a way to trigger communication to somebody outside of the system. So the system at any level of the WBS can compare the spent or billed value. And if you remember from earlier, spend is about funding being used. And then you can compare that to the funded value, which when we entered the funded and contract value, or the budgeted value, you put it in a percent, and the system on a nightly basis looks to see, was that condition met? If it was, it's going to send an email out to either a PM, a task manager, or maybe you want to just hand key email addresses in here. So this is a little bit of a push of information to folks that want to see data or analysis from the system. All right, so now I've got my project set up. I've identified who can charge to them. So let's go in and let's charge a little bit of time. So I'm going to go over to the timesheet side. The system can support multiple timesheet periods. So whether you're weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, monthly, 8-day timesheets. I mean, we've seen a lot of variations there. There's a lot of flexibility. And as a company, you can have more than one timesheet cycle within an operating company. So you might have some weekly people, some semi-monthly people, not a problem. An employee can look up their PTO balance. So there's a whole PTO calculation, accrual, both of hours and dollars method. There's a PTO request function. So as a user, if I need time off, I can go in and identify when, why, and against what type of PTO code. That sends an email out to my approver. And then if they approve it, it would go on my timesheet. If they reject it, I'd get an email why. I can also set a list of favorites. So I only see the charge codes that are available to me. So when I open up this list, here are all the codes available to me. As codes expire, they're no longer visible in my list. I also can set favorites. So the idea is I've got maybe 10 codes available, but here's the 2 that I work on every period. So I save those to my favorites, and now every time I start a new timesheet, it drops my favorites in here. And for companies that the administrator, so someone in accounting, manages the favorites, you can certainly do that. It's done inside the accounting system. And then as a user, I just go to the day that I worked. So yesterday, let's just say that I worked 8 hours in this task. If I need to put a comment on there, I'll just go ahead and enter my comment. We'll type that in here, click OK, save it. On a daily basis, as a user, that's what I'm doing. System has all the controls in place for things like if I made a change to a previously saved cell. So maybe, on Tuesday, I didn't work 8 hours in this task. I only worked 4. I thought I worked 8. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to zero that out, and the system's saying, okay, what's the reason you're changing that from yesterday's time? And I'll just say I took PTO. And we'll go ahead and save that. I'm going to enter my other 4 against PTO here, and we'll go ahead and save that change. So the system will keep that audit trail for me. It also has controls in place for time entry in advance. So if I try to enter time for tomorrow and I try to save this thing, the system just warns me that, okay, on that charge code, future time is not allowed. You can see below I do have future time on PTO, which is allowed. And then once I'm done for the week, I just hit my submit timesheet, and this would start the whole approval process. That's a little bit about recording time and time. Let's spend just a couple minutes on expenses, and we'll create a quick expense report for you. So as an employee, maybe I traveled from Thursday, and we went through Tuesday, and this was visit new clients. Click save. It's going to create my header for me. I can travel based on per diem or expense lines. So I'll just do per diem for you, and I'll choose where I traveled to. I can type into this list, or I can also hit the drop-down box. So either one is an option. And then I would just tell the system how long was I at that one location, just to save time. I'm going to just choose one location, one project, but you could certainly choose multiple. And then the type of code for lodging, my type of code for meals. Click next, it shows me my list in case I received lunch from the client maybe. Then I put my actual room rate, my tax, click finish, and now it just created my expense report for me. And then if I had other lines, maybe I had airfare. So let's go ahead and we'll enter airfare against the same job. So I'll choose the job, and we'll choose the WBS, and we have airfare, and that was $500. And then this was not paid for by me. I used the company card for that. So now you can see it just recorded a company paid expense. So the expense, we're going to still charge the client, but I'm not getting reimbursed that amount. And then I could save it. Same idea with attachments. If I had an attachment, I can drag and drop it. And then my last step would be to submit it. And then this would start the whole workflow for approval. The thing that I think people really like is that as I entered that on the web, when I come back into the accounting system, you'll see that we're going to have that expense report that's right here in the system. And if I go to the approval list, you can see that Sam, he got notified today at 12:49 that this thing needs to be approved. My status is submitted, hasn't been approved yet, and you can see the date and time that I'm logged in as Joyce. So that's when I submitted that for approval. So, and then as accounting, once it does get approved, they would just turn it into a voucher and post it. So that would be the step for that. On the labor side, the labor comes in through the time journal for labor distribution. So once all that time gets approved, you just process the approved time. It just brings it into the journal. So in essence, moves it from Timesheets to the time journal, calculate labor distribution. If you do payroll in-house, I would just post it, and then it would get processed through the NAV payroll system, or I can send it off to a payroll provider. So very streamlined there in terms of the process. A couple things just to mention here quick is, when I do the labor distribution, the system can do it based on effective rate or standard rate. It also supports timesheet changes in the middle of a timesheet period, as well as bill rate changes. So let me go into one that had a cost rate change. So in this example, you see that this created two lines because you can see that Kevin, he was working on the same project, same task, but 16 hours were at $29.60 and 24 were at $37.50. And what we can do is we can actually look up Kevin. So I don't need to go in and out of modules. I just select Kevin, hit the advanced button. It takes me right to Kevin. I look at my pay rates. Kevin's net pay was changed, or gross pay was changed on January 7th to $1,500, and that's why the line had a different cost rate. If it had a different bill rate, you'd have a line that would show that bill rate change. So the other thing that people see is how easy it is to get around when I show that example, how easily I went from the time journal over to the employee and look at their pay rate. So makes it easy for you to find answers. So I've got two more things to cover, and then we'll try to leave a couple minutes for questions. I'm going to go into my indirect rate setup. So Damon mentioned the whole process for managing indirect rates. This piece is as simple or as complex as your business. So we have some clients that have 30 to 50 pools. I've got a client that I know that has one pool. So the setup is based on your company. There's 3 steps to that setup. So step 1 is I'm defining what is my rate structure. So the way to think about it is my structure in my demo system is 1 fringe, 2 overhead, and a G&A. The sequencing is set up in a way that if you have an intermediate pool or a service center, it needs to be at a sequence above the final pool. So in my demo example, fringe, a portion goes directly to projects, then a portion goes into overhead and G&A. So because that fringe needs to be at a sequence 1. The next step is I tell the system, how does the rate get calculated for that pool? So in this example, my overhead client site pool, I'm accumulating all my overhead accounts for just my client site departments, and then my base is my direct labor with fringe applied at actual. So step 1 moved a certain percentage of fringe cost into an account that was picked up as part of this direct labor with fringe applied. Then the departments tell it what departments are participating in that pool. Once you accumulate the cost, the allocation engine tells the system how do those costs get moved out to projects. So in this example, I'm taking that allocation and sending it out to projects at an actual rate and a provisional rate. The system is going to post that to both the general ledger and the project ledger. And how the system, the actuals are just the actuals. And then for the provisional, it just takes the rate times whatever that base is based on, the effective date to do that allocation based on provisional. So you'll have both provisional and actual in the system. And then the last thing I forgot to mention here is that you also saw a column for final rate. So that'll do the final allocation along with the final billing. And then if I go into my chart of accounts, I'm just going to show you the allocation. And let's just filter our chart of accounts on our allocation accounts. So this is a 20-character alphanumeric field. It doesn't need to contain the project or department in it because that's stored at the transactional level. But what you'll see is for each pool, you're going to have 4 allocation accounts. So they just net to 0. So in this demo example, I've got $37,000 of actual company site overhead that got allocated, but my provisional rate tells me we should only have $6,000. If I drill into it, it's going to show me the detail of all the allocations. So it's going to show me by job, by department, task, WBS, the amount of the allocation. You see how that allocation was derived from the detail in the description there. We've got reports that are going to show the variance. So you'll see your provisional, actual, what the variance is. You also have this ability to set filters. So if I wanted to set a filter on the job, and I say I just want to look at transactions for 1002, now I'm seeing all transactions across all accounts for 1002. So really easy from a end user perspective to not only run the process, but to easily analyze things. All right, so my last step I want to cover is I'm going to cover generation of an invoice. So you just hit this button that says Create Invoice. It creates what we call an invoice proposal or a worksheet. So this is like a pre-invoice. So as a user, I would just go in, review this. I can print it in different ways. So category group means type of expense. Category group plus labor type would segment my direct labor from subcontract labor or consultant labor. Cost plus fee would roll my indirects into the direct section. I could print the labor by resource or just summarize it by labor category code, roll it up to different levels, print it by task or CLIN. I'm just going to go ahead and preview this. So we'll just expand this a little bit. So this one's a cost type invoice. So it's showing me all of my labor elements, current period and inception to date, other direct costs. I've got my burdens in here. You'll see the fee, withholding, total for the invoice. All these can also export to Excel or PDF. I can send it off for approval. Once it's approved, I can post it, and then it moves from an invoice proposal to a posted invoice, and then these can be reprinted as many times as you want. You can see different ones that I've printed through time. You can email it, print it on those formats I showed, including we've got the 1034, 1035 built into the application. So, easy for a user to reprint or email anytime they need to. All right, so I'm going to actually stop here, Damon. We've got some things around financial reports, but I do want to leave some time for questions because I saw that we had lots of different questions come in. So what I'll do is I'm just going to go down the list of questions in no particular order to answer some of these things. I see we've got maybe a couple minutes left. And any questions that we don't answer as part of this, we will certainly give you a call to get those answered. All right, so some of the ones that came in early on, I guess the first one that came in is, have you guys done any migrations from Deltek GCS? So that answer is yes. In fact, we just submitted to a new client that just signed up today on GCS. And we've done probably anywhere in the range between 80 to 100 migrations from Deltek, most of them being GCS Premier. Next question on here, it says, staff account will have a different home page from accounting manager, correct? So the views, I think there's about 25 or 30 different roles in the system. So not only can you use the CAN views, but you could also have your own views. So companies can have their own views. And also, people can tailor these views. So the view itself is a CAN one, but an end user could decide things they want to show or not show, and then security can control that. Next one on here is, let's see, the cost. Let me cover that. I'm going to have to give you a wide range. So we've done projects, and this depends on, obviously, licensing and implementation, but they can be anywhere from, I've seen them as low as 60 to 70,000 for software and implementation. Part of that depends on if you're on a perpetual license or a subscription. up to we've done projects for clients. There's another one about the size of customers. So our customers range anywhere from, I'd say on the low end, 30 to 50 employees, up to we've got clients that are 5,000 plus employees. All right, it looks like we're out of time.
We are. We got one more question.
Okay, all right. So actually, I'll cover the last one. One just came in, and it says, how long does a migration from GCS to NAV take? And the time, on average, I would say is about 3 to 4 months. But we've got clients that are very large. We migrated a GCS client that was 4,000 employees, and that's like about a year-long project. So for most of our clients, it's probably that 3 to 4 month range, but really we probably need to talk to you to know for sure. But anyhow, thank you for taking our lunch hour, your lunch hour to spend with us. Anyone that's on the call that would like us to buy you lunch or breakfast, we've got a breakfast event coming up next month at Maggiano's.
It's actually May. May 17th.
In May. All right, in May in
Right.
Tyson's.
And then June 8th is the lunch.
And June 8th is the lunch.
Right.
So,
and we have those up on our website.
all right. Well, again, thank you on behalf of Damon and I, and have a wonderful afternoon, and we look forward to talking to you soon.